Wilson Tipper sat on the big stone bench in front of the Capital City Museum of Natural History. He held his small tablet computer on his lap, studying a map of the museum as he waited for his friends to arrive. "You are sure that you are okay waiting here for your friends?" his mom, Dr. Caroline Tipper, asked. "I can stay for a few more minutes if you want." Free speed bike and raining on his laid-back beach cruiser. Wilson glanced at the times in the upper right of the tablet screen. It was 9:59 a.m. "It's okay," he said. "They'll be here in like 30 seconds." Wilson's three best friends, Amal Farah, Clementine Wynne, and Raining Sam, all had parents who worked at one of the museums in the Capital City network. Since they got free passes to all the museums, thanks to their parents' positions, the four friends took any chance they could to explore the museums together. Today, they'd be checking out the Natural History Museum. That meant Wilson would be the host since his mom worked there as a paleontologist. And speaking of that, "Mom, you better get inside," said Wilson. "You are going to be late." "I'll be fine." He slid his fingers across the screen of his tablet and brought up the museum's website. Okay, Dr. Tipper said. "I'll leave you alone." At that exact moment, three bicycles rode off the nearby bike trail, heading in the direction of the museum. "There you are," Wilson said, as he clicked off his tablet and stood up to wave at his approaching friends. "Bye, Mom." Dr. Tipper waved at the cyclist too. Then she ducked into the museum to start her day at work. Amal's slick bike screeched to a stop in front of Wilson. Clementine, riding her old three-speed bike and Raining on his laid-back beach cruiser, followed behind at a much slower pace. "Hey, Wilson," Amal said. She rode her bike to the back and locked it up securely. "Hi," said Wilson. "You guys are just in the nick of time. My mom was starting to worry about leaving me out here on my own." "Is the museum even open yet?" Raining asked as he and Clementine rode up. Wilson was the only one of his friends who wore a watch. "It should be opening right now," Wilson said. "Let's get inside. It's the first day of the new exhibit and I do not want to waste a second." "What is it?" said Clementine. She put off her bike helmet and wiped her brow with the back of her hand. Wilson grinned. He'd been excited about this exhibit for months, ever since Mom first told him about it. "Parasaurus," he said. "Ooh," said Amal. "I know about them. Flying dinosaurs, right?" "Not exactly," Wilson said as the four friends headed up the steps to the museum. Parasaurus aren't dinosaurs. They were flying reptiles that lived during the age of dinosaurs, though. Just like ichthyosaurs weren't actually dinosaurs. They were swimming reptiles." "Ichthyo what?" Clementine said, furrowing her brow and looking confused. Wilson just smiled and shook his head. He loved his friends, but Clementine's mind was usually in a bucket of paint someplace, or sitting in a kiln with her pottery. She didn't know or care much about prehistoric beasts. "Ichthyosaur," Amal said. "It means fish lizard, right, Wilson?" Wilson nodded. "Yep," he said as he pushed open the museum's heavy front doors. The four friends stepped into the huge front chamber. The Natural History Museum was the oldest museum in the capital city network, and you could tell the moment you walked in, everything was wooden and heavy and looked like it had been around for decades. Right in the front room, which was so big that Keeper's whole house could probably fit inside, stood the most famous dinosaur skeleton in the museum's collection, the monstrous Allosaurus. It leaned down so that its huge head stuck way out over the velvet robe that surrounded the skeleton. The dinosaur's huge mouth was open like it was about to roar or eat you. "Whoa," said Renning, sounding impressed. Wilson chuckled. "Oh, come on, Renning," he said. "You've seen the Allosaurus model before." He used the word model instead of skeleton, because it was a copy of a skeleton, not a real fossilized skeleton. Renning shook his head, his mouth hanging open, and pointed up, way up to the high ceiling of the big front room. Wilson looked up to see what had his friend so impressed. "Whoa," Wilson echoed when he realized what Renning was pointing at. Hanging there with its huge wings spread wide and its long neck hanging down was a new Parasaur model. Its enormous beak was open wide as if it would call like a giant bird. "Did you know that this Parasaur was the largest flying animal of all time?" Wilson told his friends. He stared up at the model hanging from the chains from the ceiling. It had a wingspan of up to 45 feet. "Whoa," said Clementine. "That's pretty amazing." Wilson nodded. "Its name is pretty amazing too," he said. Quetzalcoatlus. I read that it was named for the god Quetzalcoatl. The Aztecs in Central America used to worship him. His name meant feathered serpent. "I can see why," said Clementine. She stepped around the big Allosaurus podium, gazing up at the Quetzalcoatlus as she walked. It must have looked like a terrible dragon. Wilson thought it was probably way more amazing than some silly dragon from a story, but he didn't say so. Clementine was just like that, always coming up with creative stories. "Maybe that's where the stories came from," said Amal, walking next to Clementine. "Don't be silly," said Wilson. "There were no people around when these guys were flying around. I mean, maybe people found the bones and stuff," said Amal. "Just because I love space doesn't mean I have my head in the stars all the time." The others laughed. Amal was absolutely obsessed with astronomy, which worked out well since her father was the head archivist at the Air and Space Museum. The four friends walked the whole length of the huge flying creature. As the museum began to get crowded, it seemed like a lot of people were excited to see the Parasaur exhibit on its first day. "Where should we go first?" Clementine asked. Wilson opened his mouth to say to the Parasaur exhibit, of course. But before he could get a word, there was a loud snap from above. Someone shouted, "It's falling!" Wilson looked up, as did everyone else in the museum's front hall, as the largest flying animal to ever exist broke free of its chains and came plummeting towards them.